In this session I will go through the force called wind, and it's a rather simple force. It works like the force by pushing everything out, but the only difference is that this do it in a certain direction. I will show you how everything works, so we can go directly into Blender right now, and if you have a file downloaded you will have force_wind. If you haven't, well, download it and load it into Blender. So what we have here is a hose. So if I play my animation it goes back and forth like this because I have done some simple animation on that. Right now it lacks particles and force, so we will add it in. When it comes to the force wind, I think that is a rather simple and boring force. Normally it's used like a secondary force together with the primary force, but when it comes to movement, that should be like the same all the time. If you take, for instance, sand, that should be spread from a truck, or if we have spray from a spray can, or like water from a hose, like this one, then wind will work. I will do a simple demonstration of a wind before showing how I built the house, and in that I will do more advanced stuff to show you how you can move the force and the emitter together with the animation of the house. I start with just the basic, just watch. You don't have to do it. I add a plane, Shift A, make an emitter, so go to particle properties, and then I press the plus sign, and then I have the particles. If I run animation, you can see that I get these particles and that all the particles are going up and down. The reason that they bounces is that I use gravity first, so then of course they are falling down, and then I have collision on the ground, which make them bounce up again. And then it looks like this. Okay? So, and now I should add a force, pressing Shift A, force field, and then I find a wind. And you can see now that the wind force should push everything up because we have an arrow pointing up. However, if I play my animation, nothing happens, and that is because the force is too weak. We have to increase it, so I put the strength to about 8. And if I now run my animation, it's more floating. So I increase its strength even more, and now it's slowly going up. And that is like the force we used in the last session. But if I now change the direction of my force, you can see that all these particles are moving in the direction of the arrows. So I can control it by moving the wind force. And that is the main difference between force and wind. So, wind has a direction. To call it wind is a bit misleading, because no wind is going just in one direction. It often has some turbulence in. So, if you do leaves or paper flying in the wind, you often use turbulence as the primary force. And then you use wind as a secondary force to have some direction, but mostly turbulence. However, let's go back to wind. So I take the force and the emitter, and then we all have, this is what we have left. Animation, particle source, that will be the water, some wall, and a ground. To make the emitter follow the animation, then I need to put the animation to the emitter as well. Easiest way to create that emitter is to use the house that already has the animation and create a new object. So press Tab, and in edit mode, press 2 or select the edges, and then select one of the edges in front of the house. You can press the numlock dot to come close, and then select the inner ring, and hold down Alt and it will be selected. Press F to get the face and press return. So now I would like that face to be an object of its own, so I press P and then I select selection, So now all is done and I can go back pressing tab and in object mode. Now you see that I have a new object here and I have the house as another object. New object is called house 001, but I changed the name to emitter. Then we know that this is the emitter. And if I just move the animation a bit, you can see that the emitter is following the animation. That means I now can add particles. So I select the emitter, go to particle properties and press the plus sign. Since the animation is 500 frames, I also set end to 500 to make it flow from start to end of the animation. Rest we can leave as default for now. Now we add the particle source, so go down to render and change render as to object. And instance object should be set to particle. If I now run the animation, you can see that we get a lot of particles from the emitter. Doesn't look so much like water, but we have some droplets anyway. They are big, so we decrease the scale a bit, and I think I will put it to 0.02. I also add scale randomness, which means that I now get different sizes. So now I can run the animation again and we will get smaller particles. Since we have so few, I will increase the number because it's easier to show them. So I put it to like 20,000 and I rerun the animation again. And what you can see now is that it's like small groups of water. So if I go a bit closer here, you can see we have one group here, we have one group here, and another one. And so they're like grouping together in a way that water doesn't do normally. So we need to fix that. And a way to do it is that you go down to integration. I can run the animation so you can see the difference in a good way. So this is with 0.04 in timestamp. That's the default value, and with it we got all these different groups. But if I now increase the time step, you can see we get more lines, because now we changed how the simulation works. We can also add a few subframes to it. Now we have more pouring water. And this is how you can change the integration, by adding a bit of time step into this, and you will get rid of the groups. If I put this to frame 1 and start animation, you can now see that it falls more smooth instead of groups. The groups are still there, but they are longer and it's more interaction in each group. So it looks more like a flow because of the increased time step. So that is one way to make a flow. Now I would like to add a force to this. So it should follow the animation in the same way as the emitter does. We can do exactly as we did with the emitter. So I select the house, and then I press tab, go to edit mode, and now you know what to do. You can close to the front of the house, you select an edge, pressing Alt, and then you just press F and return to get the face, and finally P, and in that menu you choose selection. So then we get a separate object again, and this is house 001, and we rename that to force. Then you press tab, so we get to object mode. I run the animation again, and you can see that both the plane for the force and the emitter is moving together with this house. So now it's time to add the actual force to the plane. Select force in the tree and be sure it's the only selected thing. Then go to physics properties and add a force field. And the force field will be wind. So now we have the wind in here, and when I run the animation, not so much is happening, and that is because of a couple of things here. One is that even if the droplets are small, we have not told the particle system that mass should be dependent on size. So select emitter in the tree and go to particle properties. And here you can scroll down to physics and press multiply mass with size. I uncheck it briefly just to show the difference. So go close to droplets, and every droplet is now 1 kilo since I have unchecked multiply mass with size. Looks like before. Now I check it again, and then you can see all droplets is going way up because they weigh so little that they feel the force that we put in. So when playing the animation, everything going just up in high speed, and while it's going in that direction, I can show when selecting force, where you see it's because we have an arrow pointing up. So how should we make the arrow follow the animation? Because even if we have the animation in all direction with the emitter included, the particle still follows that arrow straight up. What we can do is change the behavior of how the plane works as an emitter. So select the force in the tree, and then you go to physical properties, and here you can change shape from point to surface. And surface means that uses the direction of the normal on the face of the emitter. So that means that the particle will now react on how the plane is placed and push them out from the face. And since we did use a plane and not an empty, it will work fine here. I run the animation again, and then you can see, if I now stop here, that everything is now following the direction of the hose because we changed shape to surface. I stop on some different frames so you can see it clearly. You can see it follows here and you can follow it here. So now it's really working. The only thing left now is to decrease the strength of the force. Right now it follows the droplets. They will go almost forever up in the air because we have a very hard strength of the force and we also lack fall off. So I think it's a time to put that in. So we change the strength, take it to 0.3. These are small particles, we don't need so much strength. In fall off we increase the power, and then we also can add some noise amount. And when I now run the animation and we then stop in a good place, you can see now that it will go first up and then it will be scattered because now we don't have so much wind force. It's get a bit slower and the gravity takes over. We also put some noise into it, so we get everything work as it should do here. Now we have all the pieces in. To really see the water, you can of course increase the particle size, but you can also increase the amount of particles. We work now with very few particles. The animation in that introduction that you saw in the beginning, we use I use 2 million particles. Then I get a good visual flow of the particles. And how much you can use is of course depending on your system, what it can handle. So you can try and see what you can do. So then select the emitter, go to the particle properties, and I just add a 0 in the end of the number, so I get 10 times as many, and I have like 200,000 now. And then another 0 to get 2 million particles. That will of course take some time for the system to work with, but it can handle it. And now you can see that I have a really big flow here with all those particles leaving the hose. So now you can really see the water. What you should do in all these simulations where we're working with particles and animation is always to bake. Bake saves the data for each frame, and then you can be sure that the computer remembers every position for the particles on each frame from the start to the end. If you don't bake a render, it only remembers the active part of what you have been doing, and then it will be like, I have only seen your first 10 frames, so I don't know how the particles should go. I can't see it. I will not present any particles for you when rendering. And you don't want that to happen. You want to see the particles all the time. So always bake your particles when you do an animation. And this is how you do it. You select the particle properties and the emitter. I will increase the amount of particles here so I don't get lag when showing things. And so I think I will just take away 1 0 here. Makes it a little bit easier for me to work with. And then you can see we have something called cache, and here you have bake. All you have to do is press bake. If you expect it to be heavy for a computer, like now with 2 million particles, then you select something called disk cache. So we don't save the bake in memory, but on the disk. Now I press bake, and the simulation for each frame is saved, and that means that it does not have to calculate them in simulation when you run the animation. So when it's finished, you can replay everything, and then it will go fast. So after the bake, it's just to press Ctrl F12 to render the animation, and you will have a nice animation. So now you know how this works with the force wind, but you also know how to connect force to an animation, which can be really good in many situations, and how you can reduce the clumping of particles. So if you have like fast movements that I had in this animation, so hopefully you know a little bit more than just wind after this session. And I will continue in the next session to show you a new force. So I just say bye for now and see you there.